That's pretty good. Tastes like Clear the Tears. YouTube, we're back, of course, talking FF7. We have yet another interview with Naoki Hamaguchi. This dude is doing interviews constantly. He did an interview very recently with Inverse that has a very interesting quote from it. If you're on the internet in some capacity when it comes to FF7, you might have seen this in the last day or so, but within this interview, Hamaguchi describes Aerith as a sisterly character to Cloud, which obviously in the shipping discussions is pretty funny. It's just kind of funny to have the director of the game describe Aerith as that, the relationship like that, right? Brother and sister, essentially. And as I've always tried to get across on this channel, like when we talk about this shit, I don't deny that there's feelings between Cloud and Aerith, right? They can love each other and be in love with other people, right? You can love other people besides the person you're romantically interested in, right? You can love your friends, right? And I guess in this case, according to Hamaguchi, you can love your sister. There's, of course, other interesting bits from this interview, like Hamaguchi discussed in the DLC yet again that was potentially going to happen at one point. And then also some interesting info on the PC version of Rebirth, so let's hop into it. Experimentation has always been at the heart of Final Fantasy, and for Rebirth director Naoki Hamaguchi, that's becoming more important than ever. Within the company working on a Final Fantasy title, there's not really a mod or certain protocol you have to follow. Every director has a liberty to create what they believe to be Final Fantasy. I personally feel this is a time in which the user involvement is much more desired when playing a game. Having the game be entirely story-based is not enough, so in that way, I think the more action-based way is very much desired within players. I definitely gotta agree with Hamaguchi here. I do really like the action-oriented direction they went with the Remake project. There's definitely a time where I didn't. If you go back on the channel, there's a rant back in, like, I think 2015, where I'm playing some Fallout 4 and bitching about the FF7 Remake project for like 12 minutes because it's a multi-part release and it's not turn-based, it's action-oriented. There's definitely a time where I was not a fan. But obviously, things change. I was that guy in the comment section, you know, bitching that it's not turn-based and shit because I didn't want FF7 to change. I grew up playing this FF7. I wanted just like a modern version of that, right? But again, things change inevitably. It's kind of crazy that there's still people that are like that, right? The Remake project was revealed almost 10 years ago, dude. And there's still people bitching that it's like action combat and whatever. And it's not, you know, a singular release and all that other shit. And they refuse to buy it. And it's like, why are you here? If you don't like it, why are you in the comment sections of videos and stuff? Why are you in the comment section of like social media posts and stuff talking about the Remake project if you have no interest in it? As somebody who's committed to doing like everything there is to do in Rebirth and like also playing Remake on hard mode, it really makes you appreciate how intricate the combat is, right? In terms of what each character is capable of doing in the middle of fighting, but also like the materia system and shit. Not to say that there's not like good or intricate combat from a turn-based RPG, because I'm sure there is. I don't really know like modern turn-based RPGs. A lot of mine are older that I've played. But there's obviously a big difference between action combat and turn-based combat, right? You gotta like think on your feet a lot more. Everything's like really fast-paced, even with like tactical mode involved. When asked if Final Fantasy can have ambitious new experiences and ones rooted in classic stylings like turn-based combat, Hamaguchi says, an endeavor I would like to keep pursuing is toward new challenges, seeing how we can approach things in a new way. So it seemed, at least with that answer, that maybe on his side of developing games for like Final Fantasy and stuff, he's not really interested in doing turn-based combat, which is fine. I'm not against it. Like, I wouldn't mind maybe sometime in the future if they were to do like a spin-off game, or even if they want to do a numbered entry, like kind of get back to the roots and do something that's like turn-based, or at least turn-based / like ATB or whatever, which is what most of the franchise is. I'd be fine with that. It's still Final Fantasy to me either way. But I'm down for it. I'm down for them to do whatever they want to do with the franchise. It's Final Fantasy. As long as it looks good, I'm going to buy it. I'm going to play it, right? I don't know if they can really go back to like the turn-based / ATB system, like strictly that for like a big release for a game. I don't know if that would draw in new players. Obviously, like older Final Fantasy fans, people that enjoy the franchise might buy it. But I don't know if like somebody who's like never played Final Fantasy before could look at like Final Fantasy 17 that's like strictly turn-based and be like, I want to buy that. I want to play that. It looks so innovative, right? I don't know. If they could come up with like a new version of like turn-based ATB, maybe they could do something cool. Considering this is a true digital entertainment trilogy, the first title, FF7 Remake, needed to capture the player's interest. From the first title, however, the second installment is vital in its own way, in that how this is received determines the anticipation of the players going into the third title, and also how we land as the final title within a trilogy. We took this approach of ensuring that going from the first to the second game, there's this major evolution of gameplay and raises the excitement of players. And this way, we believe the approach we took was successful, and it's what we desired as we go into the third. So again, of course, find myself agreeing with Hamaguchi, as I've been saying on the channel for the last almost 10 months now, that I think Rebirth is a better game than Remake. There are some that would argue that Remake is the better game, and I wouldn't even necessarily disagree with you if that's how you feel, whatever. I just think that, you know, overall as a gaming experience, Rebirth offers more. You could maybe argue that Remake is a bit more focused, even though there is like side questing and some mini games, and if that's maybe how you prefer your games, your RPGs, then I could see you liking maybe Remake more. But overall, I just had a much more enjoyable experience with Rebirth. And all I really want and ask of the third game is to be Rebirth, but even better. There are connotations about the multiverse and different timelines, but at its core, the extra scenes are about giving Cloud and Aerith the space to say goodbye to each other, to appreciate the beautiful relationship that has been built between them, and perhaps even ease the guilt Cloud will inevitably feel. In particular, there's a sequence where Cloud goes on a date with Aerith in an alternate timeline, a sequence that brings a quiet break in between some of the most raucous events of the game. There can be many different interpretations of what this scene truly means for each player, but Aerith has always been this sort of sisterly character pulling Cloud along and encouraging him. She is feeling what is to come and understanding her fate. She's still pushing Cloud along and leading him in this way, and it shows her pure-heartedness and inner strength.
Hey guys, welcome back to another Sea of Thieves guide. Today I'm going to show you the fastest way to sink a ship without using any cannonballs.
So from here on out, if you're somebody that, romantically ships Cloud and Aerith together, the character that is described as a sisterly character to Cloud by the director of the game, I'm going to look at you a little different. What kind of freaky ass shit are you into? Some people were going to write this quote off too because it's Hamaguchi, it's the director, he's not Nojima, he's not the scenario writer, he's not the story writer, right? Or like they'll take it as, well, they can still be like romantically involved and shit, but she can still be like sisterly towards him, I guess. It sounds disgusting to me, but if that's your W, then you can have it. Anyways, jokes aside, it's just like a funny quote from Hamaguchi just because, even if he's not trying to like deny the romantic relationship, it's just a funny way to word it just because of all like the shipping discussion that involves that particular scene from Rebirth. And something else I found interesting from that quote from Hamaguchi is I believe this is the first time that I've seen anyways him addressing Aerith's death, because it's normally Kitase that's always talking about like Cloud not accepting what happened to Aerith and shit like that in the interviews and shit, but here he talks about Aerith knowing what's to come and understanding her fate, right? Obviously her about to die after all this, her trying to get this one last happy moment, happy memory before Sephiroth kills the shit out of her. There's, of course, more of a point to this segment of the game, but you know what the hell I mean. There's certainly a lot to reflect on with Rebirth, and fans will no doubt be debating story snippets and pieces of lore for years to come. But as much as there is to reflect on, for Hamaguchi, Kitase, and the rest of the team, the focus is on moving forward. The PC version is quickly arriving in January 2025, which is honestly amazing. As Hamaguchi notes, development of the PC version didn't start until after the release of Rebirth, but Hamaguchi reiterates that the primary focus is getting the third game out as soon as possible, even if he wanted to linger with Rebirth a bit longer. We can pause there for a second before we get to the end of the interview where Hamaguchi mentions DLC yet again for Rebirth. But it's kind of quickly thrown out there that the PC version of Rebirth wasn't really started until after it came out back in February on PS5. So just this year is when they've really started the development, right? It's post-launch of Rebirth that they really started making the PC version. They got it out there pretty quick, right? I mean, technically every game kind of has like a PC version, right? Because they develop games on PC. Whether or not it's like, fully functioning from beginning to end, you can do everything in the game, whatever, probably not, right? Because they're making it for another platform. But still, the fact that they were able to finish the PC version that fast is pretty impressive. I had the desire to create something like Final Fantasy VII Remake Intermission, but restrained it to say let's focus on the third game and deliver that as soon as we can. Having the excitement of the community is something we thought was vital in approaching this trilogy. We really desire to create this momentum and keep it going so that players feel as though they themselves are part of creating this story of remixing the series. So I thought that quote was kind of interesting just because Hamaguchi says that he had a desire to create something like Episode Intermission for Rebirth, which might give us an idea of what that theoretical DLC would have been, because Episode Intermission is like kind of like a character piece, right? It's a focus is Yuffie. You obviously deal with other characters. We learn about other characters, brand new characters, right? But it is about Yuffie. That's kind of the whole point of the DLC. So maybe that DLC that he wanted to do for Rebirth would have been about one particular character, whether that's Vincent or Cid. I don't know. It could also be pointing to Episode Intermission in just a general way, as in we did DLC for Remake. I also wanted to do DLC for Rebirth. And it might not have been anything like that, right? Because we talked about hypothetically that they could do like a DLC that's post-Rebirth leading into the third game, right? Instead of something that's kind of like a flashback or like a flash sideways to show us events that were taking place in the middle of Rebirth is what Episode Intermission was ultimately, right? When it comes to a potential DLC for Rebirth, I'm kind of here for all of it, dude. If you want to do something after the end of the game that leads into the next game, maybe we see a little bit of the travel to Icicle Inn, North Crater, whatever. We don't know how they're going to do it exactly. Where they're going to start the third game at, I don't entirely know, because we fly off with a tiny Bronco. Where the hell are we going? I don't know. Or if you want to do like a flashback to like maybe the early days of Vincent and the Turks, or if you want to do like a flash sideways kind of flashback thing like I talked about, where you see what Vincent and or Cid were doing during the events of Rebirth, whenever they're not like with us fighting and shit. I'm down for all of it, dude. I want all of it, actually. Give me all three of those. Of course, that is where we end the video. So I pass off to you guys. What are your thoughts on this particular interview with Hamaguchi and Inverse? What are your thoughts on the brother-sister relationship between Cloud and Aerith? How do you feel about that? What are you feeling right now? Were you a Clarith before? Are you maybe more of a Clarith now? Maybe you're into that shit. Maybe you're in like the step sis, step bro category on particular websites. I don't know. I'm not here to judge. I can actually see some people using that argument like, well, he says sisterly character to Cloud, but he means like step sis, so that it's not weird when they bang, right? I can see that being a thing. I guarantee that's on a thread somewhere on the internet within the last like 24 hours or so. I wouldn't be surprised. Anyways, that's the video. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. Session works in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, @DaveYT. That's it. Bye. By the way, I did see earlier that Brianna White kind of like addressed shipping stuff. And I don't know if people were harassing her because of like this recent interview. Wouldn't be surprised if that was the case because that happens a lot in this community. And this goes for both sides of the discussion, the Clodies, the Claras. Just leave the fucking voice actors alone, you weirdos. Just fucking get a life.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Logain or leave it like Cobain.